And so along with this new test comes some new terminology. So despite the complexity of this test best being evaluated using technology, we're going to look at the process by hand, and therefore we're going to need some terms and symbols to solve it by hand. Otherwise, you would be looking at computer, calculator generated data. And even though the F test is to determine if there is a difference between means, we don't study the means. We study the variances of the samples. So for each group, we're going to start by finding the sum of xi, which is the sum of the sample values per group. So essentially, we just add up the amount of each number within a single group. Then we're going to look at ni. This is the number or count of values per group. So how many items were in there, whereas the one before actually added those individual items. X bar sub I, this is the average of the values per group. So for every group, we're going to get a group average. And then we need S squared I. So this is the sample variance for the values per group or for each group. And remember, most calculators only give us S, the sample standard deviation, and we have to square that to get S squared, the sample variance, because we need S squared for our report, or creating our values. And also, hopefully you understood that the I subscript, it changes for each group. So when it comes to the count of groups, we're going to have the count from group 1, the count from group 2, the count from group 3, so N1, N2, N3, etc. Next, we're going to use all of the values from each group combined, and we're going to create X bar GM, and this is the grand mean, that's why GM, using all the values from all the groups. So forget which group a number came from. Add every data point we've collected and divide by how many data points there are. Next, we want the variance, but specifically we want the variance sub B. The formula is a little scary looking. We're going to add up the count of each group where we've subtracted their mean from the grand mean, and because we don't want negatives, we're going to square those. Then we'll be dividing this by k minus 1, and I'll discuss k in a minute. But in words, this is the between group variance. So comparing the variance between groups, and k represents the number of groups. And last, the new term we need is the variance sub W. And this is where we take the count of each group minus 1 times that group's standard deviation, that group's variance. So notice we're not going to square everything. For variance sub B, we square some subtracted values. But we've already collected the variance from each group, so we're going to multiply that variance that we collected and divide by the sum of each of those sample size counts minus 1. This refers to the within group variance, so the variance within a single group.